when the maximum security prison erupted into a violent riot with 200 inmates taking hostages, prison guard Jake Sullivan was supposed to evacuate and wait for backup. Instead, he immediately began implementing tactical riot suppression protocols with the precision of someone who had spent 12 years as a Navy SEAL Team 6 operator, revealing that their prison security guard wasn't just a corrections officer. He was a former elite military specialist whose hostage rescue training had been tested in the world's most dangerous combat operations. Jake Sullivan had been working as a correctional officer at Riverside Maximum Security Penitentiary for 5 years, and in that time he'd earned the respect of both inmates and staff for his ability to maintain order without unnecessary force. The prison housed 1,200 of the state's most dangerous criminals, convicted murderers, gang leaders, and violent offenders who had exhausted their appeals and faced decades behind bars. At 38, Jake carried himself with the quiet authority of someone who understood that respect in a prison environment was earned through consistent professionalism and the kind of calm confidence that made even the most dangerous inmates think twice before testing boundaries. He was built like someone who could handle himself in dangerous situations, but his approach to corrections work emphasized de-escalation and conflict prevention rather than physical confrontation. The maximum security facility was a fortress designed to contain society's most dangerous criminals. Multiple security perimeters, armed guard towers, electronic surveillance systems, and strict protocols governed every aspect of daily operations. It was a place where violence simmered constantly beneath the surface, where gang rivalries continued behind bars, and where the slightest disruption in routine could trigger explosive conflicts. What made Jake different from typical correctional officers was his ability to read the subtle indicators that predicted when tensions were escalating toward violence. While other guards focused on rule enforcement and routine security procedures, Jake found himself automatically assessing threat levels, monitoring inmate communication patterns, and recognizing the warning signs that preceded major security incidents. The tension had been building for weeks. Rival gang factions within the prison had been positioning for a confrontation that everyone could sense, but no one could prevent through normal correctional procedures. It was 2:15 p.m. during afternoon recreation when the explosion of violence began. What started as an argument between two inmates quickly escalated as gang affiliations activated throughout the prison yard. Within minutes, 200 inmates were engaged in coordinated violence that overwhelmed the facility's normal security response. The riot wasn't random chaos. It was a coordinated gang operation designed to take control of critical areas of the prison, including the medical facility where civilian staff could be taken hostage. The level of organization was unprecedented in the facility's history, with different gang factions temporarily uniting against the common enemy of prison authority. Jake realized immediately that this wasn't a typical prison disturbance that could be contained through standard lockdown procedures. The inmates had systematically disabled security cameras in key areas, blocked access routes to prevent reinforcement, and coordinated their assault to overwhelm multiple checkpoints simultaneously. This was military-level tactical planning executed by criminal organizations with sophisticated leadership. While other correctional officers followed evacuation protocols, retreating to secure areas and calling for backup, Jake's Navy SEAL training activated instantly. He recognized the attack patterns, understood the strategic objectives behind the violence, and knew that standard defensive measures would result in civilian casualties and complete loss of facility control. The gang leaders had planned for standard correctional officer response: retreat, establish perimeters, and wait for specialized tactical units. They hadn't planned for tactical intervention from someone who understood urban warfare and had been trained to neutralize organized threats in confined spaces against numerically superior forces. Jake's mind automatically shifted into combat mode, analyzing the tactical situation with the same methodical precision he'd used during hostage rescue operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. He identified key terrain that needed to be held, assessed the enemy's capabilities and likely courses of action, and began implementing tactical solutions that would disrupt their coordination while protecting innocent personnel. The sounds of violence echoed through the prison, breaking glass, shouting voices, and the organized chaos of hundreds of men engaged in coordinated criminal action. But Jake moved through it with the calm focus of someone who had faced far worse odds in far more dangerous places. Jake used his knowledge of the prison's layout and security systems to implement tactical solutions that disrupted the riot's coordination. He employed psychological warfare techniques to break down gang communication, used strategic positioning to protect civilian hostages, and implemented crowd control methods that turned the inmates' own coordination against them. The riot leaders quickly realized they weren't facing typical prison security response. Jake's tactical intervention was dismantling their coordinated operation using methods that exceeded anything they had encountered in standard correctional environments. Jake's first priority was securing the medical facility where 3 nurses and 2 doctors were trapped by advancing inmates. Using tactical movement techniques learned during building clearance operations, he approached the medical wing through maintenance corridors that bypassed the main routes controlled by rioting inmates. His Navy SEAL Team 6 training had prepared him for exactly this type of scenario. Organized hostile forces operating in confined spaces with civilian hostages at risk. He implemented close-quarters combat techniques, using psychological warfare to convince the advancing inmates that they faced organized tactical opposition rather than a single correctional officer. Jake's knowledge of prison architecture combined with his military experience in urban warfare allowed him to establish defensive positions that maximized his tactical advantage while minimizing risk to civilian personnel. He used the facility's own security systems against the rioters, activating lockdown procedures in sequences that trapped different gang groups in separate areas, preventing them from coordinating their assault. The most dangerous moment came when gang leaders attempted to execute their plan to take medical staff hostage as bargaining chips for their demands. Jake intercepted the operation using infiltration and direct action techniques that allowed him to neutralize the immediate threat while protecting civilian personnel who had no training for violent encounters. What impressed even experienced SWAT officers later was Jake's tactical patience, his ability to engage multiple threats without escalating the violence unnecessarily, using the minimum force required to achieve tactical objectives while preserving the safety of everyone involved, including the rioting inmates themselves. His psychological operations were particularly effective. Jake understood that most of the inmates were following gang leadership rather than committing to personal violence, so he systematically isolated and neutralized the key organizers while providing face-saving opportunities for followers to disengage from the riot without appearing to betray their gang affiliations. The tactical response was so effective that arriving SWAT teams found a situation that had been largely contained by a single correctional officer who had somehow managed to protect hostages, disrupt gang coordination, and maintain control over critical areas of the prison that should have been completely overrun by rioting inmates. "Officer Sullivan, what you just did wasn't standard correctional response," said SWAT Commander Lisa Rodriguez as she surveyed the aftermath. "That was military-level tactical intervention conducted with precision that exceeded our own specialized units. How did you know how to handle an organized riot with that level of expertise?" Jake's response shocked everyone present. "I spent 12 years as a Navy SEAL Team 6 operator conducting hostage rescue and counterterrorism operations in Iraq, Afghanistan, and classified locations worldwide. When I left active duty, I wanted to continue serving by protecting society from its most dangerous individuals. But I never expected to use my tactical training in a civilian corrections environment." The scope of Jake's military background gradually emerged during the post-incident investigation. He had participated in some of the most sensitive special operations missions of the past decade, including high-value target captures, hostage rescues in hostile territory, and counterterrorism operations that had never been publicly acknowledged. Prison warden Michael Thompson realized he had been employing a former member of the military's most elite special operations unit as a regular correctional officer. "Jake, you're not just a prison guard. You're a Navy SEAL Team 6 operator whose tactical expertise just saved lives and prevented what could have been the deadliest prison riot in state history." The investigation revealed that Jake's intervention had prevented casualties that would have been inevitable under standard riot response procedures. His tactical assessment had been flawless, identifying the critical points of failure that would have led to hostage executions, recognizing the psychological manipulation tactics that could diffuse gang coordination, and implementing selective intervention that neutralized threats without creating martyrs or escalating violence unnecessarily. Detective Sarah Martinez, who had interviewed inmates after the incident, was amazed by their descriptions of Jake's tactical response. "These are hardened criminals who have seen prison violence for years," she reported. But they described Officer Sullivan's intervention as unlike anything they had experienced: professional, controlled, and absolutely decisive. What impressed investigators most was Jake's restraint under extreme pressure. Despite facing potentially lethal threats from multiple directions, he had used the minimum force necessary to achieve tactical objectives, demonstrating the kind of disciplined judgment that characterized the military's most elite operators. News of the incident spread throughout the correctional system and military community within hours. Jake's successful application of Navy SEAL tactics to prison riot control demonstrated how elite military training could be effectively utilized in civilian security environments that faced organized threats from sophisticated criminal organizations. The story resonated particularly strongly with other military veterans working in corrections, showing that their specialized training provided valuable capabilities for managing the increasingly complex criminal organizations that operated within prison systems. Many veterans had felt that their military skills weren't relevant to civilian corrections work, but Jake's example proved otherwise. Federal investigators arrived to analyze the incident, recognizing that the level of gang coordination and tactical planning exceeded typical prison disturbances. They wanted to understand how Jake's military background had enabled such effective intervention, and whether his methods could be adapted for other high-security facilities facing similar threats. Jake worked closely with prison administration, state correctional authorities, and federal security experts to develop enhanced riot response protocols that incorporated tactical principles learned during military special operations while maintaining the civilian character and constitutional requirements of correctional institutions. The inmates themselves were profoundly affected by the encounter. Many had participated in the riot because they believed overwhelming numbers guaranteed success against prison security. Jake's tactical intervention had demonstrated that criminal coordination was no match for professional military expertise applied with disciplined precision. Gang leaders who had planned the riot found their authority significantly diminished among followers who had witnessed their tactical planning defeated by a single correctional officer. The psychological impact extended far beyond the immediate incident, fundamentally altering the power dynamics within the prison population. More importantly, Jake's approach had preserved the safety and dignity of both staff and inmates. His tactical methods had prevented the kind of violent suppression that often characterized riot response, demonstrating that superior training and judgment could achieve security objectives without unnecessary casualties or lasting trauma. Jake decided to remain in corrections work, but with expanded responsibilities that utilized his unique qualifications. The state correctional system promoted him to Chief of Tactical Operations, responsible for developing advanced security protocols for maximum security facilities throughout the region. Military and law enforcement agencies studied Jake's successful integration of special operations tactics into civilian corrections work, using his methods to improve security at high-risk facilities nationwide. Veterans organizations highlighted Jake's story as an example of how elite military training could be successfully applied to civilian roles that served public safety while providing meaningful employment for special operations veterans transitioning to civilian careers. 3 years later, Jake had transformed security operations at maximum security prisons across the state. His protocols for riot prevention, gang intelligence, and tactical response had prevented numerous major incidents while maintaining the rehabilitative mission of the correctional system. More importantly, Jake had demonstrated that military special operations expertise could enhance civilian security without militarizing civilian institutions. His approach combined tactical competence with genuine commitment to correctional principles that emphasized public safety and inmate rehabilitation. The prison itself had become a model for advanced correctional security that protected both staff and inmates from the organized criminal violence that threatened many maximum security facilities. Law enforcement agencies and correctional systems nationwide studied Jake's methods for managing high-risk inmate populations. Jake Sullivan continues his work in the state correctional system, but everyone now understands that their chief of tactical operations brings something extraordinary to his role. He's the former Navy SEAL Team 6 operator who chose civilian corrections over military contracting, who understands that protecting society from its most dangerous criminals is just as important as conducting special operations in foreign countries. His story reminds us that military expertise developed in service to our nation doesn't end when elite operators leave active duty. It continues in new forms of public safety that may be less visible, but are equally essential to protecting the communities they've sworn to serve. Sometimes the person ensuring security at a maximum security prison carries training from the Navy's most elite special operations unit, quietly preventing riots and hostage situations with skills developed in the world's most dangerous military operations. These are the professionals who understand that true service means protecting innocent people from violent threats, whether those threats come from foreign enemies or domestic criminals. Jake's choice to remain in corrections work rather than pursue high-profile security contracting represents something fundamental about service, that protecting people doesn't require exotic missions or media recognition. Sometimes the most valuable service happens behind prison walls, provided by professionals whose expertise ensures that society's most dangerous individuals remain contained while civilian staff can work safely. The next time you think about the brave men and women who work in our correctional system, remember Jake's story. Some of them might just be former special operations warriors whose background in elite military service continues to serve and protect one maximum security facility at a time.